your dreams be pleasant dreams wherever you are. If only one little wish that I wish comes true, I know that the angels will watch over you. Good night, wherever you are. I'll be with you, dear, no matter how near or far. With all my heart, I pray everything is all right. Wherever you are, good night.
Raging blizzard that came in on winds of up to 100 miles an hour, bringing death and destruction to the whole region. The storm, which dumped snow on the Atlantic coast from Washington to New York yesterday, took on a new fury as it headed northeast toward Providence and Boston. Off the coast of Massachusetts, a Greek oil tanker has run aground, and there is a danger of a potential major oil spill. In Boston itself, hit by a huge power blackout because of hurricane-force winds, looters have been arrested in the Roxbury and Dorchester areas, and all off-duty policemen have been ordered to report with full riot gear. Brian Ross has been covering the story in Boston.
The blizzard hit Boston last night with heavy snows and winds almost 100 miles an hour. Overnight, the city lost almost all of its electric power, and many people still don't have electricity in their homes. The snow and winds haven't stopped yet. A snowfall of 26 inches is expected. Just about everything here is closed. Thousands of people are stranded. The National Guard has been called out, and the Army has been alerted. Along the coast, both blizzard and flood. The high winds are pushing high tides onto land. 2 people have already drowned. This film was made in Revere, a Boston suburb on the coast. This is how a team of Revere firemen and a truck driver rescued some victims of the blizzard and the flood.
Come on, get a move on up there. Yeah, I know. I'm going to grab one of these kids. Get his truck into here, so. Who here? I know you're going to go to him. Come here. Let's go. Right there. Someone else has you.
During the rescue, one fireman began to suffer the first symptoms of frostbite in his legs. He and the other rescuers had been waiting in the cold, rising water for almost a half hour.
Hang on to my hand. Yeah, kids are all off. Hold on to the thing there, dear.
At one point, the firemen themselves were trapped, along with NBC News camera crew members Dean Gaskell and Joe McCafferty. But the truck came one more time, and everyone got out. In this storm, there are a lot of victims and a lot of heroes. Brian Ross, NBC News, Boston.
And Rhode Island had the worst storm in its history. 26 inches of snow, and along the coast, winds up to 100 miles an hour. It is so bad, President Carter ordered the U.S. Army to go in and do whatever it could to help. A report from Providence and John Sweeney.
The mannequins in a downtown Providence department store window seem to be the most comfortable inhabitants of this city following the worst snowstorm in its history. Thousands of abandoned automobiles litter the main highways leading to this capital city, making plowing efforts that much more difficult. State civil defense officials reported at least 8 storm-related deaths, including 3 people who died of asphyxiation in their stranded autos. By mid-morning, officials said that all stranded motorists had been rescued, many by volunteers in snowmobiles and 4-wheel drive vehicles. Rhode Island Governor J. Joseph Garrahy asked for and got a federal disaster declaration today, and local officials are awaiting the arrival of federal troops to help in the cleanup operation. Until then, the best way to travel around Rhode Island is by snowmobile. John Swinney for NBC News, Providence.
In the latest satellite weather picture, the huge swirling storm can now be seen out over the Atlantic after it moved across the northeastern states, leaving them smothered in snow, streets and roads impassable, many dead, electric lines down, some cities ordering all cars from the suburbs to stay out. The official measurement of the snowfall in 4 cities, not counting the drifts: Philadelphia, 14 inches, Trenton, New Jersey, 16, Hartford, Connecticut, 20, New York City, 18. Here's Robert Hager.
New York City seemed to be coping well with what's being called the 3rd worst snowstorm of the century for this city. The final accumulation here amounted to about 1.5 feet. All over New York, automobiles were buried in snow piles pushed up by the plows, but most main streets in the city were clear. Airports in the area used big snow blowers to try to clear their runways, but the wind blew the snow back, and no major airports in the New York area have been able to reopen yet. In New Jersey, there's been a lot of damage along the coast. This is what the wind and high water did to the boardwalk in Belmar, New Jersey. A bathhouse was destroyed, battered by waves at Sandy Hook State Park. Further south, a fishing boat washed up onto the beach. In Connecticut, Governor Grasso ordered every road in the state closed to all but emergency traffic until noon today. That was so the snowplows could get through. It worked, and by midday, most major roads in Connecticut were clear. But high winds blew the snow back onto exit ramps, making access to the highways difficult in many places. There were still hundreds of abandoned cars scattered along the highways. Dozens of trucks were laid up at this truck stop in Darien, Connecticut. While some drivers worked to get their trucks out, others watched from the truck stop where they'd spent the night. Lawrence Millette said this was the first time in 30 years that he'd been forced to lay over by a snowstorm. Bill Lillyquist had been waiting almost 24 hours for a tow truck to arrive to fix a broken axle on his truck. But even the tow trucks were having trouble today. Coastal areas of Connecticut worried about beach erosion. Water was a foot deep in Harry Thompson's beachfront driveway this noon. By afternoon, the snow had tapered off here. The big storm was over in this area. The job of digging out was already well underway. Robert Hager, NBC News, along the Connecticut coast.
There's a feeling in the air that you can't get anywhere but Southwest Florida. I taste 1,000 yesterdays, and I love the magic ways of Southwest Florida. All across the sandy shores, your Southwest spirit soars each time you touch the sky. From where the water flows to where the sunset goes, we're all good neighbors passing by. Makes no difference where I go, you're the best place that I know. Hello, Southwest Florida.
Miami Go-Go Vacation. It's Miami at a go-go price. Low jet excursion fare, palatial oceanfront hotel, now at reduced rates. Have yourself a go-go vacation at America's Riviera. It's National Airlines Miami Go-Go. At a go-go price, everyone can afford. Are we putting you on?
Coast to coast to coast.
You are watching Sleepcore, media for sleep.
Hour after hour after hour. Central New York trapped.
Stay home. There is no way that they should be driving on these roads. It's just too bad out.
The record-setting storm of the century, sending the entire state into a state of emergency.
I've never been to Alaska, but after tonight, I don't think I have to go either.
A back-aching, heart-pounding heap of drifting snow hitting the ground faster than any storm ever before.
In farm country, you've got a lot of open fields, and when that wind comes across with that force, it just drifts right in behind the plows. They can't keep up with it.
Communities pulling together to get out from under. Even the Carrier Dome needed help to get through this one. The storm to tell your grandchildren about, Blizzard 93. Good evening, I'm Matt Mulcahy, along with Chief Meteorologist Wayne Mahar with this special presentation of Blizzard 93. You know, it's the images we'll never forget. The snowdrifts taller than us, the cars plowed in and buried under, the snowplow coming one more time just as you reach the end of shoveling your driveway. A record-shattering whiteout that truly was one for the history books.
It sure was, Matt. I mean, we were talking about a whole bunch of records. I think we had 7 or 8 records that were broken due to the storm. We broke the all-time record for the most snow in a 24-hour period. That was just about 3 feet of snow. It was the biggest snowstorm we ever had in the month of March in Syracuse. And then because of the snowfall, 42.9 inches, we ended up with a new record snowfall for the whole season, shattering the old record, which was only 167 inches. So a whole bunch of records out of this storm.
More on the records later on, but with all the records set, Central New York bounced right back from Blizzard 93. We begin tonight with the reason we were ready for it. We saw it coming a continent away.
Another 1,500 miles west, this stuff out here, this energy, this moisture, well, that's another storm that by the time Sunday comes around, that'll be out off the coast, and, well, that one looks interesting, too.
Here's how it's all coming together. We have a storm system now moving down through Colorado, moisture beginning to feed in from the Gulf of Mexico, and right through here, by noontime tomorrow, just off the coast of Houston, that's where the strong storm should begin to develop. We'll have a quiet day, but a cold day here in central New York, and then by Saturday at lunchtime, I had projected the storm to be off the New Jersey coastline, but the latest indications now, this storm could still be finding itself over Florence, South Carolina.
So this weekend, what we've got is moisture starting to travel up out of the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of warm, moist air, and a big batch of energy surging down out of the Rockies, and that's going to combine into a big monster of a coastal storm, the nor'easter, that'll travel up the coast this weekend.
It's going to move from Washington, D.C. right on up the Northway, right up Interstate 87 from Albany up towards Plattsburgh, Lake Champlain. If that track holds, we're in for a lot of snow. It still could go a little bit further to the right, but again, we'll warn on potential. Probably a good day to take care of some preparations. Let's take
that coast, and it is really, really going to wind up into the one of the more powerful storms we have seen in 50 or 100 years.
The first ever statewide activation of the emergency broadcast system. On a sunny mid-March day, Central New York mobilized for the worst. Plows on standby, workers, police, and volunteers ready for storm duty.
Good evening. The big story tonight, blizzard warning.
Wayne says we are not likely to dodge this one, and before the weekend is out, Central New York should be buried in new snow.
Buried is right. If you don't get out tonight, you won't get out at all. While Central New York slept Friday night, Blizzard 93 was winding up its big punch, gathering steam off the Gulf of Mexico. By daybreak, the damage had begun, the storm on track, and we were just 2 hours from seeing its leading edge of snow in Syracuse.
We were, and it was an incredible storm, Matt, too, because we were talking about the storm Saturday morning, still way down in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it was still 1,500, almost 2,000 miles away, and already at that time, the accumulating snow had already spread all the way up north into central and western parts of Pennsylvania, into West Virginia and Virginia, and when you get a storm still that far away, still intensifying, and you know that it's going to get a lot stronger, and it still has another 48 to 72 hours to go. That was a pretty good indication, Matt, that we got one heck of a big storm coming up with a good deal of snow.
And just before 8 in the morning in Syracuse, we saw the first snow. The southern tier was already measuring in inches. Blizzard 93 had dumped a lot more than that up the East Coast, though. It was on target and heading north. Florida firefighters were the first to work before dawn. High winds and rain tearing through up the East Coast, the storm stretched, touching New York first on the Long Island shore, and then New York City, where the world's hub, JFK Airport, shut down by noon. But Central New York Big East fans were already in the city, following the SU Orange at Madison Square Garden. Coach Jim Boeheim in disbelief at the way New Yorkers handle snow.
All I know is we took 28 minutes to get in today from LaGuardia Marriott, which is 20 minutes faster than we've ever got in before. So, people, unbelievable. It's a little snow out there. I mean, holy God damn. Don't ever move to Syracuse. Holy you people are unbelievable.
The storm now centered around Virginia, North Carolina area. It'll continue to move northward, and we've had some reports of thunder and lightning.
Go over the responsibilities we've made for liaison.
Red Cross volunteers huddle up for final instructions. Shelters are open and ready across the region. Fire departments like Lafayette set up command posts to aid the stranded.
Our biggest headache tonight is probably going to be Route 81.
It's here. The heavy snow is now coming down outside at a very fast rate per hour. In fact, the airport's closed, so is the thruway within just the last minute. I'm Matt Mulcahy, Wayne's here, Rob Guarino too. Special weather team coverage on the Blizzard of 93 on TV3.
Any road there. I have certainly seen my share of whiteouts in central New York, but I have never seen anything like this before. The wind is whipping, and the visibility, I'd say right now, is 20, 30 yards
We felt the building rumble a little bit here, and I'm sure you're feeling it at your home, too. Thunder and lightning reported throughout central New York, and Wayne Mahar just told me it's largely because of the pressure dropping outside.
All right, let's get you out. We've seen anywhere from damage down in Florida in the way of tornadoes all the way up to Boston now, where it's reporting winds of 81 miles an hour in the last 15 or 20 minutes. So this storm is entirely from Maine to Florida, the whole East Coast and the Act.
Wayne, right after sunset Saturday night, where was the storm, and was there any sign at all of it easing off?
Well, the storm, Matt, was still, again, a ways away from us, well down in the southeastern U.S., Georgia, starting to move off the South Carolina coast. It was still intensifying. Matt, there was no sign of the storm easing up at all, that's for sure. I mean, we're still talking about many hours of intensification coming up, many hours of snow ahead, and already here by Saturday night, as many central New Yorkers know, we'd already piled up at least 6 to 10 inches of snow around the area, and it was coming down at that time for a few hours at the rate of 3 and 4 inches an hour.
And that's a lot of snow.
Sure is.
By nightfall, most of central New York was home for good, but as we moved with Blizzard 93 into the night, the brave, or maybe not so wise, ventured out, even with the state of emergency on all over.
How you doing? Good. You just come to help? I'm stuck too.
Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. Our continuing TV3 coverage of Blizzard 93 with all of central New York and now the New York State itself in a state of emergency because of all the snow that's piling up, the dangerous winds outside, and the quick rate in which snow is falling at this hour.
And this is as of 8 o'clock. These are some of the new totals we just have come in. Binghamton with 18 inches of snow since it started this morning. Syracuse at 16.
Good evening. At 9 o'clock, I'm Matt Mulcahy. This is a TV3 Blizzard 93 update. For some areas of central New York right now, a bit of a lull in the storm, but that does not mean it's over yet. Good evening. It's just before 10 o'clock. Here's a quick example of the kind of trouble heavy snow can bring. This collapsed warehouse roof on Syracuse's west side. No injuries involved in this.
About 10 o'clock as we looked outside, it looked like there was a lull. But I'll tell you, the wind's whipping, things are swirling. It's every bit as nasty as the worst parts of the day, and it's, of course, only going to get to be worse. Just off the phone with the state police, they tell us the thruway east to west, the entire width of the state of New York, closed down. Same with Route 81.
Through the drifting snow, a rescue at Syracuse, China. A propane explosion. 3 people hurt. And then the stranded. The Amway convention at the landmark in Syracuse, among others, making the most of it all.
Yeah, I think this is great, man. We don't see this kind of stuff in South Florida. We see tornadoes and hurricanes. Oh, my God.
This has been the best snowstorm ever.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yes.
Listen, I'm a native Syracusean. I was here for the blizzard of '66. This is just flurries to me. And, did somebody schedule a jazz fest?
Some other people had no choice about where they spent part of the night.
I was supposed to go back to Rochester, but they closed the thruway down. Most of the roads are shut down, so kind of stranded for a while.
Well, it's nothing that I ran into before. I've never been in anything like this before in my life, you know. I'm always south, you know.
Spending the night someplace warm and dry was good enough for most, but during an emergency, the rescuers are up all night long, and so is TV3, taking central New York through the storm. Jim Axelrod was up through the wee hours of the morning on an overnight odyssey.
And Matt, by now, a few nights later, we've all had a chance to catch up on our rest, and the whole thing seems kind of unreal. But as Saturday night was whipping into Sunday morning, the storm, gathering its breath for its loudest blast, there was no question it was real. It was here, and daylight couldn't come fast enough.
The Florida sun is rising, let it shine, let it shine. United sunbirds fly and see 'em shine, see 'em shine. That sunshine Florida feeling fills the friendly sky. United shine to Florida, shine on friendly skies.
With the most daily non-stops to the most Florida cities, nobody shines like United.
Shine on friendly skies.
TWA's Florida. Every day. 27 times a day. From LaGuardia and JFK. The most daily nonstops to the most Florida cities. At a price that says, go now. Call TWA, your airline to Florida.
You are watching Sleepcore, media for sleep.
The red X's ran wild across the top of the closed thruway tollgate in Baldwinsville early Sunday morning. The spotlights framing the intensifying blizzard. This was an overnight odyssey people wanted only to survive. At the Fairmount Fire Department, 12 volunteers stood by with radios and food. No sleep in sight.
The call came in. We were out of here within 60 seconds, and we were on the scene within 3 minutes.
Like tanks to battle, the plows kept moving, undermanned against the raging storm. This was Route 81 northbound at 5:30 in the morning, also closed up. The tread mark's about the only sign where our camera was. Sunrise now on day 2 of Blizzard 93, or should we say... The morning light seemed to bring some optimism that the worst was over, but also some new concerns. Of course, this is Sunday morning, so we're going to have a big list of church closings, and why don't we run those down for you right now. Practically all services and masses were canceled on this most extraordinary of Sunday mornings in central New York.
I was typing early Sunday morning in the newsroom when the sunlight started to come through the window and kind of filled the room with a sense of optimism, something soothing about the light, like central New York had taken the storm's worst punch, and we were going to get up off the canvas and finish the fight.
Jim, I left the station about 2:30 in the morning, checking into the Dinkler, the hotel next door, about 3 in the morning. Saw you again about 7:30, and it looked like you were ready for a break.
That's right, Matt. I remember bumping into each other, and both a little delirious, but I remember both of us looking at each other and commenting on just how nice it was to see the sunlight again.
With first light, people began to stir to see the beating their backyard had taken. Remember, we had been hearing the storm was coming for 4 days, trapped in the house all day Saturday. Central New York was ready to witness the damage at dawn. The better part of 3 feet was on the ground. Drifts were up to here and higher.
It's about like 66. Yeah, a lot of drifts, cars buried in their driveways, drifted right in and around them.
It's pretty deep. I can't believe we got this far.
Blowing drifts all the way up the side of the house. Cars are just completely covered. Yeah, it's crazy.
And the snow totals, let's see, if you can measure it with a yardstick, you're about right?
Yeah, exactly. 36 inches. We'll take
more than 3 feet in just the last 27 hours or so. The blowing and the drifting is the real big
state of emergency in effect. No one is supposed to be driving. However, those who were had a time of it. Thankfully for some, there was a helping hand. But the snow just kept coming, and so did the wind.
What better way to get the morning errands done? The malls are shut down, and so many other stores, too. At Peter's Grocery and Shop City, manager Chuck Solomon had no choice but to open after getting stuck here himself overnight.
Register 7, right over here, was my bed. And a roll of brawny towels was my pillow.
Back to the cancellations. The Syracuse schools are closed for tomorrow. Christian Brothers Academy is closed. Bishop Ludden is closed. Bishop Grimes is closed. The Syracuse Airport, Hancock Airport, is closed until 7 o'clock tonight, and it still may not open then. That's just the latest target date for when it may reopen. Transportation, getting out anywhere far away from where you are right now is very difficult. It's improving on a local level right now. President Clinton is now quickly reviewing applications for federal disaster relief. Cars that are buried. And you might not even know there was a car underneath it if you didn't have the intelligence to figure it out. Syracuse University, and leave it here for just one moment, Syracuse University has never canceled classes because of the weather before, and today they have. Also University College. And on the SU Hill, the Carrier Dome, deflated on purpose to keep it from collapsing under the snow buildup. As we pushed towards Sunday evening, the storm had been rolling for 34 hours. Our TV3 Blizzard 93 coverage was with you all the way. Wayne, dinner time Sunday, were we finally seeing any light at the end of the tunnel?
Finally we were. Now the snow wasn't over yet, and we knew the snow wouldn't be over for a while yet, but we were finally seeing the light because the storm had now moved up to off the southeastern New England coast, getting ready to push on up through central New England. So the snow from the storm itself and the heaviest part of the snow with the storm was now starting to wind down. But we also knew that behind the storm, in came those cold, blustery west and northwest winds. And as we know around here in central New York, you get that type of a wind, cold air across the relatively warmer waters of Lake Ontario, and we talk about lake effect snow, and that's what we got into Sunday evening on into Sunday night and into at least a part of Monday, and that only added to our total snowfall from the storm, Matt.
And of course we knew the lake effect was coming. You'd been talking about it for the last day or two.
Yeah, we talked about that also, yeah.
Thanks, Wayne. With all the snow that had piled up, there were cancellations all over. You couldn't even count on the newspaper getting to you in the morning. The storm of the century hit so hard, few central New Yorkers could even read the headline. Too much snow for newspaper distributors to make the rounds. Hour after hour of clearing away Blizzard 93. It's true, what goes up must come down, but nothing was going up. And once it was down, jets were going nowhere. And still won't tonight, even though the airlines have pushed to have Hancock Airport reopened.
It's probably not real smart given the roadway situation, given some of these people are going to be coming in, even if we did open late at night. Some people come to pick people up from long distances. We are a regional airport, and the risk of that travel on the highways or the roadways is probably not worth it. Let's give the crews, including my crews, another night to get this thing caught up.
The blizzard warning continues, so does the state of emergency. 38+ inches of snow in Syracuse, record amounts, record closings, and brutal wind chills as well. Syracuse seemed to have gotten the worst of just about anywhere else up the whole East Coast.
So the forecast tonight, the blizzard warning continues in effect. Windy and cold, lake effect snow showers and flurries. Some areas another 3 to 5 inches. Low tonight around 3 degrees. Lots of blowing and drifting still with that gusty wind.
We're looking at moderate blowing snow, and the winds are really fierce out here. The wind chills are down. I am really cold out here. And you can see that this is actually one of the smaller drifts. Behind me, 7- and 8-foot drifts.
Our Lee-mometer measuring the snow and the temperature outside. Very cold and very snowy.
Well, this morning, Matt, we went down to the barn, waded down to the barn, I should say, and when we finally got the barn doors open, the horses, They were in a big hurry to get out until they found out that the drifts were up above their bellies. They made an effort to get out in the field, turned right around and came back and asked to come in.
We're stuck in. We've got about 6 and 7 foot drifts around my house, and I haven't even attempted to get outside today.
It's coming down pretty heavy now. Matt, if this keeps up, there's going to be a lot more shoveling before morning up here in the North Syracuse area.
But there's significant drifting of snow here in Oswego County. There seems to be a lull occasionally in the snow, but all of a sudden the winds come back, and I would say we have 3 to 4 feet of drift so far. The winds just gust up and create whiteout conditions.
Call your company or office before you try to go to work tomorrow or tonight, because many of them are closed or are canceling shifts. Even in a storm this tough, not everything comes to a halt. In fact, in snowbelt country, east of Lake Ontario, hey, what's another 3 feet?
Nah, this is normal. Although we thought winter was over with about 3 weeks ago, and I guess not.
Nah, I don't think it was. Just get it every winter like this. I think they over-exaggerated a little bit, as far as up here.
My brother Tim Mulcahy and his wife Kristen are at Krause Irving Memorial. They came in at 4 this afternoon, braving the winter storm. They're having a baby. His name? Jared Michael. One of an unusually high number of births during the storm, some say due to the low pressure system.
Why is this woman sweeping the snow? Oh, it's her car.
Parked the car, because you couldn't park in the driveway. We live right there. Driveway's like totally covered, so we parked here, figuring it was safer on the street so we'd be able to get out. Obviously not, because it's even worse. So I figured I'd come out here and clean it off so it wouldn't be so bad like later on in the week, but no way, I need a shovel. Definitely the worst.
Here on Route 690, the problems remain tonight. The lake effect snow, the blowing, and the dangerous wind chills. What police are most concerned about, if your car breaks down or you go off the road, they won't be able to find you in all this snow.
We go into tomorrow, 23 degrees, and yes, that is the sun. It will be out by the afternoon. Get the shovels ready.
Shovels ready. Central New York was ready for a break from Blizzard 93. The sunshine was coming, but first the storm got its last licks in during the overnight hours.
The storm had now moved up into Canada, but we were still picking up a northwesterly wind, but being it was moving away so fast, the lake effect started to die off, and it looked like it was going to die off in the next couple of hours, but the winds were picking up, and then the drifting started to come into play overnight before it subsided in the morning.
I really started to discover the full impact of the storm when I arrived here at the TV3 studios and saw the parking lot with drifts up to about 10 feet, and then came into the station and saw all the different cars out in the lot of people that had been stuck in the storm all weekend with heavy drifts, and then I started discovering all the bodies of people sleeping that had been here all weekend long. A tremendous job and quite a storm.
A last morning dusting of lake effect pushed us past the all-time record for the snowiest storm ever. Wayne, what were people dealing with when the snow removal began? How much was out there, and how high were the drifts in places?
Well, you know, generally speaking, most everybody ended up with a general 2 to 3 feet of snow out of the storm in central New York. But also, as we sort of forecast well in advance, the least amount of snow, if you can call it that, would be as you headed out into western New York. Buffalo, for instance, they only had 19 inches of snow. Rochester piled up about 23, 24 inches of snow. Penn Yan, Bologna, Geneseo, that area, again, about 2 feet of snow or so. And right here in central New York, specifically Hancock Airport, Syracuse area, piling up 3.5 feet of snow. So that amount worked out pretty much as we expected. Most everybody 2 to 3 feet. As far as the drifts, Matt, the winds could have done a lot more damage in the drifting department. We had wind gusts of 45 to 50 miles an hour at times at Hancock Airport. Many people in the countryside areas had drifts of, we had reports 5 or 6 feet or so, right. And it could have been a lot worse.
Although that's pretty high.
That's pretty high, yeah. It's enough to cover a car.
That's right, and it did. With just under 43 inches on the ground in Syracuse, a day off from school or work was a great way to go.
See, driving around today, people have done a fine job of putting their lives back to normal after this big storm. The road crews especially. Most roads are open, clear, and relatively safe tonight. But as we also found, there are some people who are still feeling the full effects of Blizzard 93.
There you go. All right, good.
Welcome to Hobart Avenue. The people who live on this dead-end street in Syracuse say they've been waiting for 3 days for a snowplow to show up.
They don't care about dead-end streets. They just
go on by.
So the neighbors banded together and have taken it upon themselves to clear their own street. It's hard, backbreaking work, and they're not happy with the Syracuse DPW.
We pay enough taxes here. All the other streets around us are done.
Negotiating the side roads remains a challenge. Many cars still buried under heaps of snow as special equipment is brought in to chew a path down narrow streets. All the while, people shoveling and shoveling to dig themselves out, only to see their work destroyed in a blast.
Well, you know, I felt like pelting him with snowballs, but I let him go by. He's just doing his job.
The sheer weight of the snow causing problems at Pencan Mall, where part of the roof collapsed. Mall management says it was only a minor problem, but...
On the Today Show this morning, the governor admitted New York has taken some hard hits lately, but says it keeps bouncing back.
For all of that, my state is open today. The public buildings are open. I expect my state workers to be here. The airports are open. The roads are open.
Hancock did reopen at 8 this morning after being shut down about 40 hours. People by the hundreds lined up at ticket counters for outbound flights that had been delayed or canceled. Many flights are still delayed this evening. Tim Barber was stranded 2 days.
You got to take it with everybody else. You think you're the only one, and I myself have done that, but you got to just go with the flow.
The Teal Avenue office in Syracuse, sorters were sorting this morning, telling us some processing is delayed because mail is arriving late by air and by truck. Carrier Doug Litz says it's rough getting to the mailboxes and people haven't cleared the snow away.
As Central New York found new ways to pile it up, schools called in cancellations for a second day. Buried sidewalks kept the kids at home, and that's fine with them. With the sunshine out, it's time to get out the sled and make the most of Blizzard 93. While the kids play, the adults fine-tune a special Central New York talent.
We're a community of experts tonight, calloused, sore, and tired of shoveling. And like any community of experts, full of suggestions about the best way to get it done.
You gotta break it apart. Take it little by little, do by layers usually. You gotta put your back into it, and you gotta use your arms a lot.
It's all in the motion, continuous motion.
Bend the knees, use the arms, work the back.
The shovelers always kind of look down their runny noses at the snow blowers and the plowers. But listen to them. They'll tell you it's no picnic their way either.
Well, you get sore in these too.
Where do you get sore?
Your back, your legs, from hitting the gas and brake all the time.
And how about this one? Do you take this man or woman for blizzard or for worse?
It's the one day that everybody will remember. You know, how can anybody forget your wedding day? You know, they're gonna be like, March 13th. You got.
I said, you better not ever forget our anniversary.
Getting married March 13th, you shouldn't have had to worry about getting snowed in on the way to the church. Isn't this late in the year, Wayne, to get such a storm coming in, so much snow in March?
Well, you know, the weather patterns matter. Still very fickle this time of year. I mean, we're still dealing with a lot of cold air, and particularly this time of year, when you get this very warm, moist air trying to come up out of the Gulf of Mexico, sort of the first signs of early spring, and still plenty of cold air coming down from Canada. You get the combination of this type of air mass, and you can get these potentially big storms. And of course, that's what we had, one of these big giant snowstorms. So I guess we can say it really isn't that late in the year to get pounded by a big storm. And certainly there have been times when we've had big storms even later in the year, too.
My father always says there's always another storm after St. Patrick's Day.
And you know, I think he's right. Yeah, we'll probably see another one, too.
Now, set it up for me. How much snow fell down? What kind of records were broken during Blizzard 93?
Well, again, you know, we're talking about numerous records being broken out of this storm. We even had one temperature record broken, a record low temperature. But as far as the snowfall records, we had the greatest snowfall in a 24-hour period, which was just about 3 feet, just about 36 inches of snow, again, measured at Hancock Airport. And because of that, we also had it as the greatest storm, greatest snowfall from any storm in the month of March in Syracuse. And because of this one storm, too, we boosted us up to the record snowfall for the season, going past the 166.7-inch mark, which was a setback just last year. You know what's interesting, too, Matt, is that now we've actually had 3 out of the past 4 years in Syracuse as record snowfalls.
And something that seems to get lost in this, it was cold out there and wind chills were well below zero.
I mean, wind chills were dangerous. I mean, this is the type of wind chill that we don't talk about, but maybe 4 or 5 times a year in an average winter, you're talking wind chills that were 30 and 35 degrees below zero.
That's dangerous.
That is dangerous. That's life-threatening.
Thanks, Wayne. As for the blizzard of '66, the one people will never forget, well, it seems to be a generational thing in part. Those who went through that one full bore insist it was bigger, but Blizzard 93 certainly has its place right up there.
The similarities of the two storms is that in 1966, we had a track that jumped down into the Gulf of Mexico. They both followed the same track. They both also headed up the coast, but they stayed a little further inland, which allowed a lot of moisture to develop from the Gulf of Mexico. Then it collided with the cold air over Syracuse, creating a significant amount of snow. The major difference between the two storms is that in 1966 we had 42 inches over a 4-day period, where in 1993 we had it just about in a 2-day total. So a lot more snow in a shorter period of time for the 1993 storm.
There's still a lot of going back and forth about the storm and just how big it was. Yes, it produced more snow than the blizzard of '66, but again, we have to remember back then the road cleanup wasn't quite as good, and you know, that's why it appeared in many respects to be a much bigger storm back in '66. But 43.9 inches the total. That's a new snowfall record. We topped the 24-hour snowfall from a 10 o'clock period to a 10 o'clock the next day, and other records with record low temperatures.
Let's talk technology for a moment now. As we said at the onset, we survived Blizzard 93 remarkably well because we saw it coming from so far away. Why is that? How can you do that?
Well, you know, really what it comes down to, Matt, is the technology. That's the key word here. The technology, the computers and weather forecasting nowadays, the computer models that have been developed in weather forecasting over the past 15, 20, 25 years or so. I mean, back years ago, we didn't have these type of advanced computer models, let alone satellite and radar and all this sort of gadgetry. Now, though, we're looking at the technology of several different types of computer models. And what was interesting about this is that we had all of these 3 or 4 computer models indicating 5, 6, 7 days in advance that there would be a big storm, a lot of upper-level energy traveling down into the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of warm, moist air coming up, this combining into a big storm, and eventually traveling up the Atlantic seaboard. So really, Matt, what it comes down to is when you have all the computer models for several days in a row, from days a week prior to the event right up to the event, consistently saying the same thing, you know, nowadays you pretty much go by it and think that, well, I guess something big's going to happen.
It's pretty unusual, though, that those all line up day after day, isn't it?
It is, because normally they don't line up day after day like that. I mean, normally the meteorologist will look at the different computer models and all the data that we have in satellite radar and go by their own experience and try to decipher which one is best for each given weather event each different day. But when they all line up well in advance, indicating pretty much the same thing, you know, that pretty much tells the meteorologist that we've got almost a certain event coming up, and then it's just a question of whether you go for 1 foot of snow or 3 feet of snow.
Right. Now, with Blizzard 93, Wayne, you had your 4-wheel drive. That came in handy shuttling people around. What kind of personal memories will you take away from this storm?
Well, I mean, it was very interesting being here at TV3, of course, during the storm. What I found, I think, the most interesting was not only the cohesiveness of the whole TV3 weather team, but the whole TV3 news operation itself. I mean, everybody was here, you know, around the clock, overnight, the hourly updates, the live updates, everybody pulling together. And as you mentioned, shuttling people back and forth from hotel to hotel, somebody getting an hour's sleep here, hour's sleep there. I mean, it was a real team effort. And I mean, on the weather side of it, I mean, any storm that you term a storm of a lifetime or a storm of once every 50 or 100 years.
You don't throw that around.
No, you don't throw that around. That's a scientific, you know, anomaly that a meteorologist is going to remember.
I'll remember getting the call on Friday evening that we were planning this extensive coverage because the forecasts had been coming in and we were sure that the blizzard was going to hit. And getting so excited, I was up very early in the morning Saturday planning to do some other things, threw everything aside and got in here as early as I could just as the snow started to fall. I ended up getting my car out 4 days later from the parking lot in the back. So a lot of memories are made over a 2-day storm period. Some schools still weren't open 3 days into the new week because kids couldn't get to school safely with all the snow. For our TV3 crew who covered Blizzard 93, it was a time to weather the storm ourselves.
on Sunday morning after the night of the wild snow, and work called, and I knew, gee, I guess I got to get in there. But of course, at that point, I couldn't get out of the house, so the snow was up to my waist. So that's how I hopped on a snowplow, really, literally, and that's how I got into work on Saturday. Was riding in on a snowplow. And when we got here, we went out and covered the story.
I tried coming in through the front door. There was no walk. I took like a few steps, and then I just walked to the back door, and that was pretty bad too. But it was just snow.
I was out there in the howling blizzard, shoveling and monkeying around for what seemed like ever.
Getting nowhere?
Yes, getting nowhere. I couldn't keep up with it.
You sit there and you write over and over again, our message is stay home, everything is canceled, call first, just plan on staying in. And then we would say, hey, you know, can you go to Liverpool and shoot this, and can you go out to Pulaski and see what the story is out there? So it's interesting that we accepted ourselves from that, but had to tell people to stay home.
We had all of our equipment, probably, I don't know, 30, 40 pounds each, the heavy tripod, the whole deal, and couldn't find one. So we ended up walking all the way back to the hotel, which is Lexington and 42nd Street, probably about a 45-minute walk, through slush and ice with no boots, no hats, no gloves.
So besides...
We hit rock bottom.
You know, everybody had been working hard, and it was just time to blow off a little steam. And Rick Massotti was talking about jumping out the back doors, you know, from the second floor into a big snowdrift.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. It was a good idea. It was a lot of fun. It was like a great stress release.
Gee. Are you ready for Disneyland?
The snow blizzard 93 left behind will melt away. At least we hope it does. But its impression on central New York will take generations to fade. 20 people died across the state, 3 of them here in central New York. Most after the storm working on removing the snow, many heart attacks. Property was damaged, sometimes heavily. Roof collapses, trees torn down. Cars hit by plows after being buried in the snowbanks. Insurance companies will be busy for quite some time. But talk about busy. You should have heard the phone ring in the TV3 newsroom all weekend. That was our tie to the vital information all of you were working to get out to the public. Police agencies calling and faxing road closings and state of emergency information. Businesses calling in shift cancellations and total shutdowns in some cases. Schools dialing our number to tell kids and teachers to stay home. And every organization who had any plans at all on the weekend had the chance to call in and make sure that nobody came, making sure they didn't put their people at risk by asking them to go out on the roads. We thank you for sharing your time, staying informed with TV3's around-the-clock coverage. We also thank Wegmans for helping make this Blizzard 93 special available to you. We survived Blizzard 93 all together with all of central New York. This truly was the storm to tell your grandchildren about. For Wayne Mahar, I'm Matt Mulcahy.
You're watching Sleepcore, Media for Sleep.
This is the story of a visit to a land that knows no winter. The land where the sun reigns. Greater Miami, Dade County. This is Dade County, Florida, with over 500,000 residents, an area stretching from horizon to horizon, including Greater Miami, Miami Beach, and extending as far south as the Florida Keys. Since the early days of Spanish explorers, people have come in increasing numbers to this southernmost American metropolis, and today, Dade County is one of the nation's major transportation destinations. Every day, hundreds of families come to Greater Miami. Many come by plane, arriving at Miami's famous international airport. Some come by streamlined train, and thousands come by automobile. There's a lot to see in Dade County, and there are a lot of ways to get around. But look, here's a family that's going to be a little different. Mom, Dad, and little Lisa have decided to see Greater Miami in a most unusual way. So let's join them on a helicopter excursion around the area and see the sunny land as it's never been seen before. All aboard and stand by for a smooth takeoff. Greater Miami's mainland and the islands of Miami Beach and Key Biscayne are connected by 5 major causeways across sparkling Biscayne Bay. Dade County is noted for these convenient spans across the bay. And here we go over the world's largest and most unique concentration of hotels, motels, and apartment buildings. It's Greater Miami's front yard, where there's a continuous round of fun all year long. This is popular Miami Beach, the playground of the Americas, where there's pleasure and excitement for every size vacation budget. The crystal blue waters of Greater Miami have lured our family to take time out for a refreshing swim at one of the many ocean beaches in the county. Yes, and there are hundreds of fresh and saltwater pools where swimming and relaxing are possible every day in the year. We take to the air again to see what water fun others are having. There's sailing, water skiing, even sightseeing from one of the pleasure cruise boats. And of course, there's world-famous Florida fishing. There are many ways to fish in Greater Miami: by charter boat, by party boat, from the beaches, on a bridge or pier, and even on a quiet inland lake. But whichever way you choose, the fishing is the finest in the world, bar none. Our family is next taken by Whirlybird to the races. The finest thoroughbreds come to Greater Miami to thrill visitors and to run for the big stakes offered at the area's 3 beautiful, spacious race courses. Other pari-mutuel sports in Greater Miami include the lightning-fast dog races, where swift greyhounds pursue an elusive cotton bunny and provide thrills aplenty for the eager spectators. And speaking about thrills, there's the breathtaking sport of high lie, the fastest game in the world, It takes years of practice and superb physical condition to play this fascinating game with this kind of speed and agility. Jai-alai is another popular pari-mutuel sport in this land where the sun reigns. The real beginning of Greater Miami's year of fun is the King Orange Jamboree, with the New Year's Eve parade, a spectacle of brilliant color. And the New Year's Day Football Classic, a game between two of the top teams in the country. There's something going on in the Orange Bowl all year round. Our visitors decide to inspect one of the many golf courses in Greater Miami. This one is a public course, open all the time and always in top condition. Dad tries his skill on the carpet-smooth green, while little Lisa holds the flag. And both do a perfect job. While our visitors have seen many of the places of fun in the community, they took time off to peek into how Greater Miamians live. Everywhere throughout Dade County, there are model communities with places of worship and schools, and homes ranging from peaceful suburban bungalows to magnificent mansions. Famous shopping centers with wide streets and plenty of parking space, such as Lincoln Road, Miracle Mile, and Flagler Street, add to the pleasure of Dade County living. Greater Miami is proud of its fast-growing University of Miami. The young university has an enrollment of over 10,000 and is a leading research center of the South, attracting students from all over the world. On the shores of Biscayne Bay, we see imposing Villa Vizcaya, the art museum of Dade County, a $14 million heritage of art treasures and culture. Greater Miami culture is also reflected in the modern auditoriums of Dade County. Regular programs feature outstanding attractions. Greater Miami is one of the leading convention centers of the nation. Conventions of any size can be readily accommodated. From the air, we see the breadbasket of Greater Miami, South Dade County. This Redlands district is one of the most fertile areas in the whole state of Florida and provides residents with a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables all year. Mom is attracted by the ripe mangoes, a tropical delicacy grown in Dade County. Liking the looks of Greater Miami more every minute, Dad looks into the industrial opportunities in Dade County, and he finds many. Light manufacturing is a major industry and an important segment of the economy of this land of perpetual springtime. Greater Miami-made products are sold throughout the world. Better business means better living, and Dade County's industrial scene is humming with activity. From industry to Indians, that's the contrast of Greater Miami. These are Dade County's first residents, the famous and colorful Seminole Indians of the Florida Everglades. They entertain our family with their fascinating souvenirs and thrill them with the dangerous sport of alligator wrestling. Later, Mom and little Lisa enjoy the world-famous garden paradise, Fairchild Tropical Gardens, a vivid display of the natural beauty of Dade County. But all that is beautiful and exciting is not limited to the daylight hours in Greater Miami. Nighttime also promises a round of activity. Theaters, nightclubs, and moonlight cruises await visitors any night of the year. And before our family sets out on its nighttime excursion of fun, they have a memorable meal in a beautifully appointed restaurant with a view that allows them to look out over the dream that became a reality to them. You too can enjoy the same fun of Greater Miami. Find out more about this sunny land. Write to the Greater Miami Development Board, Post Office Box 589, Miami, Florida. We'll be looking for you soon in Greater Miami, Dade County, the land where the sun reigns.